Well, joining me live from Westminster is the MP Wes Streeting. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. Well, that's what Diane Abbott has to say. Are you going to consider your position?
I'm not quite sure what Diane Abbott's asking. If she wants an Ilford North by-election and she wants to go and defend my 589 majority, I wouldn't encourage it under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. I think, actually, having considered my position this morning, I agree with the Chief Rabbi, who has said that the credibility of the Chakrabarti report into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party is now lying in tatters. I have a lot of respect for Shami Chakrabarti, actually. She's got an incredible record as a campaigner for civil liberties and for human rights. But let's not pretend that the timing and nature of this appointment doesn't stink, because with one single appointment today, Jeremy Corbyn has both undermined the credibility of the independence of the inquiry into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, but also distracted from what Labour should be focusing on today, which is the consistent cronyism of David Cameron's House of Lords appointments. Because throughout his premiership, not only did numbers of the House of Lords swell to make it one of the largest chambers in any parliament in the world, he stuffed it full of Conservative Party donors and former special advisers, which undermines the argument for the House of Lords, which is about expertise. So I think this is a terrible mistake by Jeremy Corbyn. I'm surprised that he offered a peerage in these circumstances, but I'm also surprised that Shami Chakrabarti chose to accept it in these circumstances as well.
Well, do you think Jeremy Corbyn is naive enough to not have thought this through and not thought that there would be this fallout?
I do think Jeremy Corbyn is naive enough, yes, and I think it's yet another poor judgment that's undermined the effectiveness of our opposition. But I do think there are now questions for Jeremy Corbyn and Shami Chakrabarti to answer. Firstly, when was this appointment to the House of Lords first discussed? Secondly, when did it agree? When was it agreed? And thirdly, did those discussions coincide with the inquiry into anti-Semitism, which was supposed to be independent, but now we've got the Board of Deputies for British Jews, Chief Executive Gillian Merron's been out today saying that she thinks the inquiry is a whitewash. It's further done damage to Labour's credibility on tackling anti-Semitism, and it's damaged the credibility of the whole inquiry. I think this is a terrible error of judgment by Jeremy Corbyn, and we should have had no part in David Cameron's crony resignation honours list.
Well, let's pick up on what Diane Abbott had to say there. What do you think it says to women and to minorities? Here you have a human rights campaigner, a well-regarded lawyer. She's given a peerage, and everyone yells, well, she's a sellout.
Oh, I've not said Shami Chakrabarti is a sellout. And if she had entered the House of Lords through the independent Lords appointments process and sat as an independent crossbencher, or indeed if she had been a member of the Labour Party for more than 5 minutes and was appointed at a later date as a Labour peer, then I would say, on the basis of her experience as a civil liberties campaigner and on human rights, that she would make an excellent contribution. I do think she will make an excellent contribution to the House of Lords with that experience. The question is now about the nature, the timing and nature of this appointment. And I'm really genuinely saddened, as someone who welcomed the Chakrabarti inquiry, had called for the inquiry, I welcomed the appointment of Shami Chakrabarti. When people privately said, can we trust it? Is it genuinely independent? Should we engage with it? I always supported it, and I encouraged people to take part. But now, as the Chief Rabbi said today, I think the credibility of the whole report is now lying in tatters, and the whole exercise has been completely undermined, and it's a terrible error of judgment by Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, let's look at that report, because she did give a detailed list of recommendations. So what do you want now to happen regarding specifically that report on anti-Semitism?
Well, she did make a whole load of recommendations about what the Labour Party should do. I would like to see those recommendations implemented. I think things have very much gone quiet since the report was published, but I do think people now will have very little faith that the inquiry genuinely looked at in sufficient depth at both the nature of incidents that occurred in the Labour Party and the effectiveness of the leadership's response to these incidents, which was one of the reasons why the inquiry came about, because of Jeremy Corbyn's flat-footed response to dealing with allegations of anti-Semitism perpetrated by Labour Party members. I don't see how actually we rebuild trust and faith in the process from here. I simply hope that over the course of this summer and into the autumn that we have fresh leadership for the Labour Party and we can rebuild the confidence and trust in the Labour Party that's been lost under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership when it comes to tackling anti-Semitism. We've had a long and proud history of tackling all forms of racism. We've had a long and proud history of tackling anti-Semitism. Jewish Labour figures have been a huge part of our history, and I hope we go back to being a party that's known for and widely respected for our commitment to tackling all forms of racism.
OK, Mr Streeting, thank you very much.